Why you must stop explaining yourself. Jungian insight. What if every explanation you offer is really a tax you pay to a God you do not believe in? The words leave your mouth like receipts, proof that you are harmless, reasonable, permitted to exist. And yet, after the performance, you feel smaller, not larger. You feel as if you put your soul on the counter and got coins back, a bad exchange you agreed to because you couldn't bear the silence after the word no. It's a modern ritual, as reliable as any church bell. We explain ourselves. But what if this ritual is exactly what keeps you from becoming someone real? Listen closely to the moments when your throat tightens. The message you wanted to speak was simple, and then your mind sprinted toward reasons, context, disclaimers, justifications, the entire legal defense team of your persona. You can sense that it's not only about being understood. It's about surviving the invisible court that seems to convene around you whenever you choose. The judge is not your boss, not your partner. It's older than that. It's an archetype, a heavy presence with a gavel carved from childhood. It asks, who do you think you are? Jung called one of our most visible masks the persona. It's a role we wear to be loved by the tribe. Competent, agreeable, safe. The persona is not evil. It's useful, like clothing. But if you confuse the mask for the face, you begin to live for the eyes of others, and your speech becomes a performance to prevent exile. Explanations multiply like stitching to keep the costume from falling apart. The result is a life spent adjusting seams while the body underneath is starving. Here is the forbidden truth. Over-explaining is not about information. It is a pact with fear. We learned it when love required proof. A parent's brow tightens, and we scramble for why. A teacher says, explain yourself, and we decide that the only safe person is a justified person. We grew up and kept the ritual alive, even when the threat disappeared. We explained to lovers to avoid displeasure, to bosses to avoid blame, to friends to avoid envy, to ourselves to avoid the quiet knowledge that we want what we want. What is the cost? Eros dies in the courtroom. The living thread that connects us, the risky, unedited contact between two souls, cannot breathe under cross-examination. When every boundary must be explained, the boundary is not a boundary. It is a presentation about a boundary. When every desire must be translated into logic, desire becomes embarrassed and goes underground. We call the resulting hollowness maturity. We call it being reasonable. The unconscious calls it a betrayal. The unconscious speaks in images, not arguments. Dreams, symptoms, slips, sudden inexplicable sadness. Their grammar is symbolic. When you keep explaining, you turn away from this language and treat the soul like a committee that needs convincing. But your inner life is not a committee. It is a wild country. Jung would say that the self, the organizing center beyond the ego, does not negotiate. It summons. It beckons. It leads you into a destiny with more mystery than reason could endorse. Watch what happens when you don't explain. A pause enters the room like a stranger. The person across from you might feel something unfamiliar, the edges of your presence. They might become curious or angry or strangely respectful. Something in you stands up quietly, and something in them has to decide between projection and contact. This is not manipulation. It is energetic truth. When you stop explaining, everyone's gods show up. Theirs want you to stay small. Yours wants you to come home. There is also the trickster. Every time you explain yourself, you are sure you are being clearer. But the psyche loves riddles. It resists control disguised as clarity. Explain too much, and people stop listening. Explain too little, and they lean in. Why? Because human beings are not moved by piles of reasons. They are moved by something nameless that cigarettes used to have, and temples still have. Presence. A sense that you know where you stand, even if you cannot defend it to a jury of ghosts. Think of Cassandra, cursed to tell the truth and never be believed. She explained, and the city burned as if her words were kindling. Think of Psyche, who lost love the moment she demanded proof in the lamp's light. Myth whispers what the modern world forgets. The soul is allergic to interrogation. Give it vows and visions, not footnotes. When you stop explaining, you are not being rude. You are keeping a promise to something inside you that never signed the social contract. Perhaps you fear that if you don't explain, people will leave. Some will. The ones who stayed for the performance will look for a new show. But a few will remain, and they will relate to you directly, not to your argument. The paradox is cruel and liberating. The more you explain, the less you are believed. The less you explain, the more your being is felt. It's not that words are useless. It's that the words that matter are not pleas. They are declarations, poems, clean refusals, honest admissions, the vocabulary of a life that knows its center. So I will say plainly, you must stop explaining yourself not to become hard, but to become permeable to the right forces. The self is quiet. The shadow is loud when denied. The persona is shiny and fragile. The task is to organize your life around what is true, and that requires silence that can absorb misunderstanding without collapsing. Most people cannot bear that tension. They rush to fill it with reasons. But the future you want has a cost, and the first payment is your willingness to let others be wrong about you. If this feels extreme, it is because you have measured your safety in explanations. That metric has kept you small. Tonight, ask your life a question. What decision am I postponing until I have the perfect explanation for it? And then notice the tremor that runs through you. That tremor is the exact place your soul is asking to grow teeth. Not to bite, but to feed. There is a woman in an office at dusk, the light outside turning the glass towers to mirrors. She has drafted an email with 6 paragraphs to say a simple fact. I cannot take this project. She edits it for the 12th time, making the tone warmer, the reasons longer. She is not arguing with her manager. She is arguing with a voice she learned to obey when she was 5. You will be loved as long as you are useful. Her keyboard clatters like a rosary. She clicks send, and afterward, feels as if she has confessed a crime she did not commit. The scene changes. A man stares at his partner in the kitchen. He is about to say no to a family trip that drains him. He knows the old script, the flooded reasons, the careful justification about budgets and schedules. He can hear the defense attorney in his head, preparing exhibits. But something interrupts. A memory of a dream from the night before a dark road where he refused a ride from a stranger without explanation. He tries something dangerous. He says gently, I won't go. He lets the sentence hang in the room like a bell. Now the tremors begin. The other person's entire psychology animates before your eyes when the oxygen of explanation is withheld. Their projections swarm like startled birds. If they were waiting to hear you plead, they will feel cheated. If they were waiting to find you, they may feel the door open. Without the cushion of your reasons, they must meet their own inner court. That is the uncomfortable miracle of boundaries. They don't only protect you, they reveal others. Jung observed that what we do not make conscious appears to us as fate. Over-explaining is a ritual that keeps certain fates intact. If you habitually justify your choices, you ensure that your life will be organized by convincing others rather than by listening inward. The archetype of the judge sits enthroned above your shoulders, and you keep feeding it arguments instead of noticing the trickster smirking in the corner. The trickster knows that the real court is imaginary. He would prefer you walk out of the courtroom and let the proceedings continue without you. But the courtroom has furniture we confuse for love. You believe that understanding is intimacy. You believe that if they just know why, they will finally meet you. This is a charming error. The human heart does not open because it has been convinced. It opens because it feels safe. Safety arrives in presence, in the boundary that does not leak, in the clear eye without paragraphs. When you explain, you are saying, I do not trust that my life has authority. When you stop, you are saying, I will regroup my authority around the self. There is a psychological mechanism underneath the compulsion. The child faced with unpredictable love becomes a diplomat. She learns to scan the room and deliver reasons. The boy who learned that anger detonates against him moves like a bomb technician, cutting wires with words. These children grow into adults who believe that reasons diffuse explosions. But reasons are paper shields when the other person is in a complex. A complex is an autonomous knot of emotion and memory. You cannot argue it into calm. You can only refuse to activate it with your explanations. Complexes are trick doors. When someone says, explain yourself, they might be trying to lure your ego into their labyrinth. Once inside, you are no longer two people. You are two histories colliding. Your partner asks for why, and hears their father. Your boss hears their mother. You hear your childhood tribunal. This is transference, and it is not a pathology. It is the normal way the psyche tries to finish old business with new people. Explaining pulls you into the past. A quiet, respectful no keeps you in the present where real contact is possible. Consider the persona again. It is a costume designed to win the audience. When you polish it with explanations, you might win applause, but applause is not love. Applause is relief from the audience who no longer feels threatened by your difference. Meanwhile, your shadow, everything you exclude from your image of yourself, waits backstage. It does not accept awards. It demands attention. If you continue to explain instead of listening, the shadow will interrupt. A sudden outburst, a sickness, a sabotage. The soul would rather be whole than good. There is another cost to chronic explanation. It starves mystery, and without mystery, energy drains from life. Jung said the psyche needs images. Explanations destroy images like overexposure ruins film. The more you dissect a butterfly, the less you have a butterfly. The more you dissect your desire, the less you can feel it. You become precise and destabilized, a rational person who cannot sleep and does not know why. The sleeping parts of the soul avoid bright lights. So, what is this unknown force that keeps you explaining? It is not intelligence. It is anxiety. Anxiety is not simply fear. It is fear with a story that reproduces itself. You narrate to calm it, but the narration is food. The more you feed it, the more it asks. The way out is not to explain better. The way out is to change the ritual entirely. From argument to acknowledgement, from defense to declaration, from reacting to requesting, from justifying to choosing. These are not different words. They are different gods. Some will say, but what about accountability? We are not preaching secrecy or stonewalling. We are speaking of a shift in stance. Accountability is clean. You admit where you acted. You repair. You continue. Over-explaining is sticky. You perform, you twist. You hope the performance ensures you against disapproval. Accountability ends with responsibility. Over-explaining ends with resentment. Notice how resentment grows where you have explained yourself in order to be allowed to do what you wanted anyway. The story in the office does not end with an email. It ends months later when the woman's body stops aching, when she notices that she was never punished for sending a 3-sentence no. The story in the kitchen does not end with a tense Sunday. It ends when the couple discovers that they can disagree without treaties. A small fire burns in both rooms. The glow of recovered sovereignty. The person who stops explaining realizes that the world did not end. Only a certain way of seeking love did. Here is the turn you might not expect. Stopping your explanations is not just a social tactic. It is a spiritual rearrangement. It changes the very geometry of your inner life. Most of us mistakenly aim our devotions outward. We make the tribe our temple. We spend our mornings lighting candles at the altar of approval. But your soul has another altar, darker and more intimate, carved by dreams and instinct. When you stop explaining, you stop worshiping the outer gods can begin to attend the inner ones. Jung's language for this turn is deceptively simple: individuation. It is the process by which a person becomes who they are, divided no longer between outer mask and inner river. To individuate is not to isolate. It is to embrace a paradox, to belong to your own deep patterns so fully that you can belong to others without bargaining. Explaining is a bargain. It assumes you need a witness to validate your path. Silence might be loneliness at first, but then it becomes a bond with the self, a steady companion that does not flinch when you are not approved of. There is another paradox. We think we must explain to be ethical. Yet the more we explain, the less we feel our life as a moral fact. Ethics, at depth, is a felt sense of alignment with what is alive and true in you. That alignment does not come from arguments. It comes from the mysterious fit between your nature and your task. Arguments can add light, but they cannot generate fire. The fire arrives when your inner masculine or inner feminine, your animus or anima, stops persuading and starts listening. The anima and animus are not characters so much as energies. The inner feminine listens, imagines, gathers. The inner masculine differentiates, decides, directs. In a culture of constant explanation, these energies often become distorted. The inner feminine turns into justification, offering reasons in exchange for affection, and the inner masculine turns into tyranny, demanding reason before granting permission. To stop explaining is to re-educate both. The inner feminine is invited to hold her visions without selling them. The inner masculine is asked to protect her without interrogating her. This rearrangement changes how you hear others. You start to notice when someone is pulling you toward their inner courtroom. You feel the hook in your stomach that used to drag you into explaining, and instead, you breathe. You let their distress exist without becoming its entertainment. Silence here is not abandonment. It is respect for each person's journey. It treats the other as an adult capable of metabolizing their feelings without devouring yours. The soul-to-soul connection becomes possible because neither of you is managing the other's gods. It also changes how you meet your own shadow. You will be misunderstood, and your shadow will say, "See, you are unlovable without the costume. Do not argue with it. Make tea for it." Jung never promised that individuation was a comfortable project. He described an underworld descent. The Sumerian goddess Inanna removed a garment at each gate of the underworld until she stood naked before the Dark Sister. Every explanation you give is a garment. To arrive at the core, you lose them. The fear is real. So is the power that arrives when you are no longer negotiating with the dark. Let us look at projection more carefully. When you explain, you try to control what others project onto you. You hope to steer their narrative, to be the good one in their story. This is both understandable and futile. People will project. Their unconscious will make you into a villain or a saint, regardless of your paragraph count. When you stop explaining, you allow the projection to show itself. You learn who sees you and who sees only their past. This is diagnostic, not punitive. It is how you choose your true community. There is an even deeper rearrangement. Your relationship to time shifts. Explanations are often a hedge against the future. You are trying to insure yourself against what might happen if they are displeased. But the future does not obey contracts written in anxious ink. It arrives as encounter. It favors those who can improvise, those who are in touch with the present. When you stop explaining, you enter the living stream of the moment. You have more attention for what is actually happening than for the story about what might. Something else appears in the silence, the voice of imagination. Not fantasy that evaporates, but images that make demands. Jung called this active imagination when we engage these images in dialogue. It cannot be done while you are busy convincing others. Imagine holding a quiet inner audience with the parts of you that are never asked to speak. The jealous one, the hungry one, the exhausted one, the strange one who loves silence. Ask them what they want without requiring them to write a report. You will learn more in 10 minutes of this than in 10 pages of explanation sent to a person who will skim. As your inner life clarifies, your outer language simplifies. You might find yourself speaking in fewer words that carry more weight. I'm not available this week. That doesn't work for me. I'll think about it. You do not owe an argument because you are living one. Your life. The self communicates through your atmosphere. People feel it and adjust or leave. You begin to trust that adjustment. You stop auditioning for roles you never wanted. Now we must admit the grief that comes with this shift. There are losses that explanations use to delay. Some relationships depended on you being endlessly interpretable. Some jobs depended on you always being available for persuasion. When you stop explaining, you may discover where love was confused with control. This knowledge hurts. It is also the doorway to a different tenderness, one that does not require performance. Loneliness will come. The nights will stretch. You will stand in the kitchen and think, who am I if I am not persuading anyone? You may even miss the drama of the courtroom you left. But into the quiet walks a presence soft, patient. It was there when you were a child, before you trained yourself to plead. It is the one who watched you sleep and did not ask for reasons. Call it soul. Call it self. Call it a silence with a heartbeat. It will not demand that you explain. It will ask you to keep it company. This companionship has gravity. It steadies you in storms. When someone is angry with you, and you have said only the necessary, you will feel the pull to write just one more message to make sure they understand. You will stop. You will feel a swell of distress in your chest, and a whisper that says, if you don't fix it now, you will lose them. You will breathe through that whisper until another arrives. If you surrender yourself to this, you will lose yourself. This is not stubbornness. It is fidelity. Fidelity to what? To the pattern of your life. Jung saw that each of us carries a particular image of wholeness that wants to be lived into the world. It is not generic. It has your scars, your furies, your peculiar joys. Explanations blur that image by making it too palatable. They sand off the corners that would have fitted you into your actual fate. The corners hurt when you keep them. They also allow you to lock into place where you belong, with the people and in the work that require your edges, not your edits. There is compassion in this stance too. When others explain themselves to you, rushing and pleading, you can remember the old grip of that God. You can listen without rewarding the performance. You can say, I hear that it matters to you. You can ask, what do you want? You can allow their own authority to flicker and strengthen in your presence. Stopping explanations in yourself trains you to stop harvesting them from others. You become a person who invites dignity. The devouring mother and the tyrant father archetypes we all carry wake when explanations are offered like offerings. The devouring mother says, give me your reasons so I can keep you inside me forever. The tyrant father says, give me your reasons so I can grant you conditional freedom. When you stop explaining, you are weaning yourself from both. You are learning to live under a different sky. It requires that you become frightening in the best sense. A person whose yes and no are real. Let me be precise. This is not permission to be vague to avoid accountability. It is permission to be exact without embellishment. There is humility in this. You admit that you cannot manage how you are seen. You admit that you cannot manage how the story lands in other people's bodies. You admit that your reasons may be complex and still not appropriate for public consumption. You keep some things as a temenos, a sacred enclosure, not out of secrecy, but out of respect for the depth at which your life chooses. A practical image. Think of a walled garden. In the center is a fountain you cannot relocate. The garden is your inner life. When you explain everything, you are tearing down the walls to show the world the fountain. It looks generous. It is also a violation. Strangers wander through, throw trash, reorganize your plants, leave the gate open. When you rebuild the wall, you can still invite people in. You simply do it on purpose, with timing, with awareness of who can walk gently. The fountain keeps singing even when no one is listening. In fact, it sings better. There will be moments of exquisite pain. The friend who can't tolerate your new quiet. The parent who tries the old hooks and finds they no longer reach you. The lover who wanted an ever-available witness instead of a partner. You will cry. You will doubt. You will think you have become cold. And then a new kind of intimacy arrives, shy at first. It does not require persuasion. It asks you to show up, not to sell yourself. It brings simplicity, a coffee shared without subtext, a collaboration that moves because both people know where they end and the other begins. You become responsible not only for your boundaries, but for your radiance. Radiance is not enthusiasm. It is the glow of a person who is not leaking. Children notice it. Animals relax around it. Elders trust it. It carries a paradoxical warmth and distance, welcoming and sovereign. It says, I am here. It also says, I will not trade my soul for your comfort. This radiance is not a performance. It is the side effect of a long loyalty to your own depth. The strangest freedom waits on the other side of your last unnecessary explanation. The freedom to be misread, to be called what you are not, to have rumors live their brief lives and die without you chasing them. You realize that your task was never to curate your reputation. It was to curate your reality. That reality is made of small, undramatic choices. When to answer, when to rest, when to speak, when to leave, when to enter the dream of another, and when to keep your own dream on the pillow. You start to hear the world differently. The news screams. The feeds argue. You do not. Not because you are superior, but because your energy is finite and you know where it belongs. Silence is not withdrawal from life. It is an offering to life. It gives your actions a ridgeline, a shape. People will still ask for explanations. Sometimes you will offer them, glowing and concise. Sometimes you will not. Either way, you are no longer negotiating your right to exist. Look at the small rituals you can change. Instead of typing a paragraph to decline an invitation, you send a sentence and sit with the heat in your stomach until it cools. Instead of narrating to yourself why you are tired, you lie down and sleep without apology. Instead of telling your family what they want to hear, you tell them what is true and let them adjust to you as you have adjusted to them. These are not techniques. They are votes for a world where souls are not bartered for applause. If you need a myth to carry you through, remember Orpheus descending to find Eurydice. He was given one instruction: do not look back. Explanations are often a way of looking back. Back to the ones who needed you to be a certain shape. Back to the selves you tried on to survive. You will want to turn and make sure the past approves of your new walk. Don't. There is a threshold here. And on the other side is a music that sounds like your own name, spoken by someone who has always loved you. Will misunderstanding cost you? Yes, but understand this. The cost of clarity for others is often ambiguity for yourself. You have paid that price for years. Let the debt be canceled. Step into the risk of being clear to yourself first. The world may match you slower than you like, but when it does, the match holds. Work aligns with temperament. Friends align with character. Love aligns with essence. You are not trying to convince a tide to move. You are learning its rhythm and stepping with it. Imagine the next time someone asks you to explain. You feel the old impulse, the brief panic. Then you remember that you are not standing before a judge. You are standing in your life. You answer plainly, or you decline to answer, and you let the silence be a landscape, not a trap. Into that quiet, other sounds come. A shift in the air, the soft click of a projection falling to the floor, the beginning of a different kind of conversation, or the end of one that was not meant for you. Both are mercies. This is not a campaign against words. It is a devotion to words that matter. It is a refusal to waste your syntax begging to be allowed to be who you already are. The unconscious does not need paperwork. The self signs with dreams, with symptoms that resolve when you stop betraying yourself, with a deepening of breath when you say the sentence that costs you comfort and buys you reality. You will know you are on the path when your explanations are fewer and your life is fuller. If the world asks what changed, you can smile and say, I stopped narrating my worth. I started living it. The old gods still call from their benches, haunting your alibis. Bow if you like, out of respect for all the years you survived by performing. Then turn and leave the courthouse. There is weather outside. There are roads. There is a horizon that has been waiting for you since the first dream you remember, the one where you are not arguing with anyone, just walking toward a light only you could see. Walk, let them talk. Let the soul reclaim the breath you have been spending on explanations. And if someone asks for a final word on why you must stop explaining yourself, give them this. Because your life is a myth trying to be lived, not a case trying to be won. If this opened your eyes, subscribe to Boring History, because the truth is never boring.